Okay, hello everyone. My name is Desyanti Matan. I am a student of University of West Sulawesi. My major is English Education Department. Today, I'm going to talk about five hypotheses in the second language acquisition. The first is the acquisition learning hypothesis. The acquisition learning hypothesis distinguishes between two acts which one can master language. The first one is acquisition. Language acquisition is the natural way to develop this to develop linguistic ability and a subconscious process where individual is not aware of the process as it's happening and when the knowledge is acquired. The acquirer generally do not realize that they processes any new knowledge. Acquisition acquire meaningful interaction in the in the target language during which the the acquirer is focused just on meaningful rather than firm. And the second is learning. Learning is knowing about a language or formal knowledge of language. In the other hand, uh, learning is a conscious process. New knowledge or forms are represented consciously in the learner minds, frequently in the form of language rules, and the process often involves the process often involves error corrections. There are different basic between acquisition and learning. The first is acquisition similar to child language acquisition, whereas learning is uh, formal knowledge of language. The second difference is acquisition is picking out knowledge, whereas learning is knowing about a language. The next difference is acquisition is explicit. The acquisition is explicit explicit language, whereas learning is explicit explicit language. The next is acquisition is a subconscious process, whereas learning is conscious process. And the last difference is acquisition is do not help in teaching formal, whereas learning help in teaching formal. The second hypothesis is the natural order hypothesis. The natural order hypothesis implies the learning or acquiring a second language occurs in a predictable order. This is why we find the learner start with learning the very basic structure of language. Then later they embark on learning complex grammar. For example, when learners begin to learn English, they first try to use simple present tense, then present continuous, and next to the simple past, and so on so forth. The third hypothesis is the monitor hypothesis. The monitor, hypothe- the monitor hypothesis states that learners have the ability to monitor and observe their utterance when speaking, and even they have ability to correct their mistake if they make any mistakes. Creation differentiates between three groups of learners who monitor themselves. The first is underusers. Underusers are who tend to focus on fluency rather than producing correct grammatical sentence. And the second is overusers. Overusers are those who pay too much attention to their grammatical mistakes and tend to have a desire to produce a perfect grammar. And the last is optimal users. Optimal users. Optimal users are those uh, optimal optimal users are those learners who know the appropriate time to correct their mistake in the conversation. The third hypothesis is the input hypothesis. The input hypothesis explains how one acquires language in progressive manner. A second language performer improves their level in target language through exposing to the comprehension input. Creation refers to this process as I plus one. I plus one meaning that learners ameliorate their language competence in a natural order whenever they learn new things. By extension, one, uh, by extensions, I represents one's current competence, and I plus one means that a learner's knowledge have improved further to the next stage. The, hypo- the hypothesis indicates that one moves from a not, one moves from a state to the next thanks to the comprehension input, which means that we can acquire the second language only through understanding message while aging with uh, people in conversation. The last hypothesis is the affective filter hypothesis. The affective filter hypothesis illustrates how our attitudes, feeling, and thought thoughts toward the target language determine how much we are going to succeed in language. There are three measures of there are three major fact there are three major factors in the affective filter hypothesis. The first is motivation, the second is self-confidence, and the last is anxiety. To explain, students who motivate and self-confidence while participating in the class. The student who motivate and self-confidence will participating in the class and tend to excel comparing to those who feel shy, stressed, or anxious. This hypothesis reveals that a learner should adopt a law effective filter which is associated with self-confidence. However, it states that a learner should not be open to a language in order to have a successful experience while learning. However, in this case, if a student is stressed, they simply prevent internalizing the language in a LLAD. That's all from me. Thank you very much.